Okay, hello everybody. I hope your days have been going well. We're excited for you to be here with us and can't wait to get this presentation started. But first things first, the tech stuff. During the presentation, there won't be a chat, but there will be Q&A throughout the presentation. So please feel free to pop in questions as they come to you, and we will address those at the end of the presentation. So without further ado, Mark Wiesman, the CEO and owner of Lauber.
All right, thank you, Emily. So they just click the Q&A button and type in their question, is that right?
That's right.
Okay, excellent. Well, I'd like to welcome everybody to Lauber Business Partners webinar on positive intelligence. We have a great crowd here, so we appreciate you attending. So we're really excited about today's discussion and think the incredible turnout today might be testimony to the desire to reset our work culture in the most positive way possible as companies are reevaluating how they work after this past challenging year. So what is the why for this program right now, you might ask? We see the need for organizations and businesses of all sizes to basically take stock of their team's needs so they can be optimally engaged and productive. You often hear leaders say that people are the most important asset, and yet the investment that organizations make in their team's development may not really reflect this. You know, we invest in new equipment, health insurance, new technology, other infrastructure, but still many view coaching as a luxury. And at that, it's often reserved only for executives. Julie and I are both big believers in the value of coaching, which is why we recruited Jane Schrader to build our coaching practice, and we're really happy that she's joined us. So the foundation of Jane's coaching skills began early in her career while she was pursuing her master's in educational psychology. At that time, Jane focused her coursework on cognitive behavioral, I knew I was going to mess that up, person-centered and strength-based approaches. Jane's interest in pursuit of positive psychology and emotional intelligence training came a little later in her coaching career, but that was still 20 years ago when she started in on that sort of stuff. So Jane has developed Lauber's coaching programs utilizing this foundation and is constantly integrating new learning and research in this field. And it's really this new learning and research that has led us to positive intelligence. And Jane and the panel are going to share some knowledge around that and some direct experiences from some folks that just went through this training program. So thank you all again for attending. And Jane, I'll let you take it from here.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mark, for the kind introduction, and welcome everybody. I'm so glad you're here and have interest in learning more about positive intelligence, fitness for the mind. Coming from someone who has studied human behavior for many, many years, PQ has impacted me in a way that no other training I have ever done has. And it's a lifelong journey. So I'm currently engaged in advanced coach training with regard to PQ, and there's lots left to learn. So it's safe to say I'm no Dalai Lama. Still, I will do my best to answer your questions when we get to that part of the program at the end. I also believe, in addition, and to tag on to what Mark was mentioning, that context really matters. And as we all begin to emerge from this unprecedented time of the pandemic with our own stories to tell, what better time could there be for us to engage in something that can help us improve our world, our organizations, our teams, and ourselves? Positive intelligence definitely starts with us as individuals, but its impact goes way beyond that. In fact, changing the world one individual at a time is the ultimate goal of the founder of this model, Shirzad Chamine. My intention for this session is to introduce you all to PQ, which is a framework for reaching our full potential, increasing performance and happiness in both our work and in our lives in general. And truth be told, I am just really inspired by this work, and I'm really hopeful that by the end of our session today, it has energized you as well. So what is positive intelligence? Let's dive into it. We all have mind chatter, or that internal voice, even if we're not aware of it at all times. Sometimes the messages we hear serve us really well, and that's when we're in sage mode. Other times our internal messages can sabotage us. So our intelligence, or our IQ, and our emotional intelligence, our EQ, both of which everyone is familiar with, these things contribute to our capacity or our potential. But positive intelligence, or PQ, actually determines how much of that potential is ultimately achieved. Mental fitness is another way of describing positive intelligence, or PQ. So positive mindset, again, indicates that we are in sage mode, while negative mindset indicates we're in saboteur mode. If we take some time to strengthen our mental muscles, we can improve our performance, our relationships, and our overall well-being. This slide gives you a little bit of information here as to the kind and degree of impact that practicing PQ can have. So, for example, teams perform better, sales performs better, longevity increases, creativity increases, and overall our happiness and well-being increases. From my perspective, the impact of the PQ framework is due in part to three unique things about this model. And I believe that this is what will allow this model to stick for the duration, as opposed to kind of being here today, gone tomorrow, like so many of the models we all have known has happened to. The first thing that makes PQ unique is that it integrates several scientific arenas. Secondly, it focuses on practical application. In fact, taking action through practicing using an app on your phone. And then finally, the research method used by Shirzad and others is factor analysis, which goes about identifying the root cause. So I'm going to talk about each one of these in turn. The integration of these four specific areas was really the start of my intrigue with PQ. When everything I have studied over many years separately came together in this model, I knew I was in the right place. As mentioned, I've studied cognitive and positive psychology for a long time, and neuroscience has been creeping into coaching training over the last 10 to 15 years, mostly focused on how, if we're aware of how the brain functions and the research that's been done there, then we can have a greater impact on sustainable change. And then finally, performance science, in addition to coach training in these areas around leadership, performance, team performance. I've also had an interesting experience and been closely involved with the work of my nephew, who is a professional golfer. And he has done quite a bit of work with sports psychologists over the years. And I've been just following that very closely. And once the technical and mechanical aspects of the game are mastered, the rest is all about mindset. And Sage mode would definitely have a better chance of producing sustained and happy champions. To give you an idea of where the research comes from for this model, I just wanted to share a couple of the sources here, but it's really been a global research pool. And you can see that with the last point here, 500,000 participants from over 50 countries. Lots of CEOs, as well as students and world-class athletes. And all of this research is summarized or cited in Charmaine's book of Positive Intelligence. Okay. The second unique aspect of the PQ model is the focus on building mental muscle using the app. And we thought it would be fun. We're going to try this. So we'll see how it goes because we haven't done this before, truth be told. But we thought it would be fun at this point in the process to get your thoughts by doing a little bit of a survey. And Chris is on board to help us with this. We'd like to pose a question here to all of you. That question is, to sustain positive change, what do you think the percentage of training should be dedicated to creating insight versus action or practice? And so there's 4 different possibilities there. If everyone could vote, if you will, indicate what your thoughts would be on that. And then this is supposed to work like magic, and it's supposed to tabulate, auto-tabulate. So we'll give you a couple minutes to give us your thoughts. I hope there's something coming in for you there, Chris.
Okay, I think I just ended the polling and I'm going to share the results.
Awesome. Okay, wow, we're really interesting split here. But it looks like the highest is 20% insight and 80% action, with a couple of very close second and thirds here, showing a 50-50 split and a little bit more insight than action on one of them. Okay, let's close the poll. Thanks there, Chris. So in reality, according to the research, to sustain positive change, it does take 20% insight and 80% mental muscle or practice. So we've got a really, really smart audience here. Okay. I mean, when we think about that, just for a second, when we attend a webinar like this, you know, hopefully it's going to leave everyone with some insights. That would be good. That's one of the goals. But if you are aware personally that your mental chatter, for example, is more negative than positive, then you would need to commit to action and practice if you're interested in sustained change. Okay. The final unique aspect of the PQ model is this, the fact that it uses factor analysis as the research method. This form of research or method actually simplifies the operating system, which just frankly makes it easier to use. And part of that is because it identifies the root cause. And so through all of the research that's been done on this, there's only 3 core mental muscles that need to be built in order to increase our positive intelligence. So these are the intercept the saboteur, the initiate self-command, and the activate sage powers. Okay, we're going to take each one of those as well. So the first mental muscle to focus on is intercept the saboteurs. And research has revealed that there are a total of 10 saboteurs. So we've identified those. And so now we know what our targets need to be. One, however, stands apart, and that is the universal judge. So I've had the chance to witness the true universality of this work firsthand. And it's another thing that really has taken me aback about this model and this work. And as part of my advanced training, I am involved in a weekly coaches Zoom meeting with coaches, other coaches from frankly every corner of the world. And it has really been amazing to me to listen to their stories of how this master judge interferes with them both personally and professionally. And through all of that, it really has, been clear to me that this is not a factor of culture or race or nationality or geography. It's really a human thing. And to the points here on the right, the human brain is actually hardwired with a negative bias that was an evolutionary survival mechanism for us. And something that once served us for our very survival no longer has the same relevance for us. But the issue here is that no one mentioned this to our brains. And so they still operate from that negative bias point. The other point about the judge is that it can be really tough on self, on others, and on circumstances. But the research also indicates that the judge of self is the most prominent for the majority of humans. In addition to the judge, there are also 9 other nasty characters, and they're called the accomplice saboteurs. For most of us, 2 or 3 of these typically stand out, and these are identified through an online assessment. Okay. So this gives us the opportunity to talk about the saboteurs in general, and the fact that they really live in parts of our left brain. They motivate or actually push us through negative emotion. And an interesting point here is that they may actually generate success for us, but not happiness. And one example I can share with you here is really quite poignant. Again, going back to my coach training, there is a coach involved in the process who I have met through this. And coaching is relatively new to him. It was a career change for him. And prior to that, he was an extremely successful marketing and advertising entrepreneur. In fact, he bought and sold several multi-million-dollar marketing ad agencies in Manhattan. And so his performance was at an all-time high. And right along with that was complete misery. So he was engaged in a crazy, stressful lifestyle, very unhealthy lifestyle in his description, and it cost him his family, his friends, his marriage, his health. His saboteurs were in complete control, and they were constantly pushing him with that no pain, no gain mentality. And when he reached one threshold, the next one was right in front of him to try and tackle. And, you know, listening to that, I'm guessing anyway, that we all know someone who falls into that category. Okay. So a little bit more about negative emotions. The thing about negative emotions is that they're not all bad. Like physical pain, for example, they're a helpful signal to us that something's wrong or something needs our attention. However, if we stay in negative emotion too long, we're likely to be impacted by our saboteurs. Negative emotions can actually hijack us and bring us to a place where we're no longer productive or effective, and it can create a negative emotional spiral. For example, I'm going to use another, so forgive me, but coming off of the Masters golf tournament this weekend, I built in, and talking about my nephew earlier, this just came to mind, so I'm rolling with it. So let's say that a golfer misses a 2-foot putt to lead the tournament. So his immediate frustration is definitely going to get his attention. And that makes sense to all of us. It's understandable. The key becomes how quickly he can recover from that, or will his internal judge continue to beat him up and produce that negative downward spiral that frankly we can see on the golf course with certain players, or will he choose a different response? Okay, we'll just hold that thought. The second mental muscle that we need to build for our positive intelligence is initiate self-command. And this is part of the process when first we recognize and intercept our saboteur, then we command our thoughts to shift and to focus on a simple physical sensation. So I'm going to give you one example, and that would be, and I hope that I'm not going to pixelate out here, but one example is to rub two fingers together with such dedicated, mindful attention that you can feel the fingerprints, the ridges on your fingers. So we're not talking about breaking a sweat here. This is a very, very simple physical sensation. The key is that we are focusing our thoughts there solely and not allowing other thoughts to creep in. So this focus on a physical sensation is what we refer to as a PQ rep. So it's simple, but the key here is that it's actually activating the sage portion of our brain. And there are many different PQ reps to choose from. That was just one example. Now, if you're thinking, how could something so simple really make any difference at all? Shirzad, the founder of this, would suggest that your saboteurs are messing with you. They're trying to convince you that something has to be difficult or painful in order to be worthwhile. Okay, so this next slide is showing a fork in the road, and it's actually showing our neural circuitry. So what is actually happening in our brain when we use the self-command muscle. Again, reminding us that humans are wired with that bias toward the negative. And so the pathway that would, at that choice point, turn to the left and go to the saboteur mode, that is really deeply entrenched because of our negative bias. So the research has actually, and so much so that the research actually has come up with a 3-to-1 ratio. And this comes from both neuroscience and positive psychology. And what this actually means is that we would need to choose the SAGE pathway 3 times in order to overcome one choice to go down the saboteur route. So there's a lot of damage we need to undo. Okay. The third and final mental muscle is to activate the SAGE powers. And each of the 5 SAGE powers are a way to access our positive emotions after shifting away from the negative. So let's go back to my golfer example, if you can humor me here. Remember, he missed the putt. He felt immediate frustration. If he recognized those negative thoughts coming and shifted to focus, doing a 2-minute PQ rep, obviously he would choose one that would not be noticeable to the public, which is definitely possible. Next, he could choose one or more of the SAGE powers to bring him into SAGE mode. So for example, he could show himself empathy and compassion for being human and missing a gimme putt. It happens to all of us. Or he could explore and learn and think about what he did. Maybe he pulled it and remind himself of his ideal putting stroke. Or he could decide to think out of the box and and innovate and use an alternative stroke, or maybe he has a different putter in his bag. Next, he might focus on the deeper purpose and navigate and maybe put it in a really broad perspective and be grateful for the opportunity he has to play in this tournament in the first place, and maybe be grateful for making the cut. And finally, he could move forward with clear and laser-focused action on the very next shot. With any of these options, he is operating with positive thinking and has shifted into SAGE mode and is operating from the SAGE perspective. Okay. The SAGE perspective is that every outcome or circumstance can be turned into a gift or opportunity. The focus here is on how we choose to respond to our circumstances, not so much on the circumstance itself. Obviously, there are varying degrees of difficulty in circumstances. And this program is not about suggesting a Pollyanna sort of denial of circumstance. nor is it toxic positivity, which is a term that's become more popular as of late, which is really kind of a get over it message. Actually, both of those are coming from saboteurs. And so the PQ program actually goes into a great amount of depth on this concept, much more than we have time to explore here. But the primary points I want to really leave you with is that we can choose how to respond, and what we believe and where we focus our attention tends to become true. So in other words, what we're looking for, we tend to find, and this is where the self-fulfilling prophecy comes into play. Okay. All right, so we've spoken about the saboteurs, and now we're going to fill in the sage side of things. So the sage powers live in the right side of our brain. They motivate or pull us into positive emotion. And when we are in sage mode, we are able to achieve not only our highest performance, but also our greatest sustained happiness and well-being. Okay, so you might be wondering, what does it take to shift from saboteur to sage? Is it really possible? And the answer is yes, it is, absolutely. It becomes easier. I can say that personally after many months of doing practice in this, but it takes commitment. It's not just going to happen. Practice needs to happen to build the mental muscles. And so initiating, doing all three of these, intercepting the saboteur, shifting through PQ reps and activating our sage, all of that needs to be happening in order to see a difference. Okay, so a reminder that our saboteurs have been building those neural pathways for a very long time. And so it's going to take time and patience and intense practice. And specifically about the practice, the research has found that 15 minutes a day for 6 to 8 weeks has shown significant changes in brain matter on MRIs. And I don't know about you, but I find that fascinating. And so the program that Shirzad has put together is really based on this as the foundation. And certainly there's a lot more you can do beyond that, but this is the foundational program. So at this time, I would like to introduce Julie Tolan, for those of you who don't know Julie, the co-founder here at Lauber, and Jennifer Eastman, the president at Assisted Living Locators. Both Jennifer and Julie were active participants in the Lauber PQ group coaching pilot that just completed a bit ago. And they would like to share their experiences with you of the program. And then, and I'm going to pose a couple questions to them to start it off, but then we will open it to questions that you've been putting into the Q&A, and those questions can be for any of us. So, okay, so Jennifer and Julie, what has been the biggest benefit or impact of the program that you can share here, and how are you different as a result of the program? Who would like to start?
I was going to say, this is serious, but as I failed to assert, I was going to say I'm actually a different kind of confident. There's a different sense. I've always felt that I had great self-awareness. I've benefited from, as Mark mentioned, we are huge believers in coaching. It has been an important part of my own professional development, but also I've tried in the organizations that I've led prior to Lauber to ensure that the people that work with me had that opportunity. I have a different sense of calm, and I would dare to say happiness. But as you said, Jane, this is a work in progress. We are really, Jennifer and I are in the same cohort that Jane is leading, and So we are still in our infancy to some extent in this work, but there is no question after just, a couple of months, there is a definite difference and a really hopeful one.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that, Julie. How about you, Jennifer? What are your thoughts on that, the benefits?
I think for me, the biggest impact has been on my business, but it has benefited all parts of my life. I recently sold a business in what became a very complicated transaction, and then decided right after that to start a new business that has to deal with seniors and assisted living right in the middle of this pandemic. So I was, really losing my ability to work through those challenges and stresses that were happening because of being in the place that we were in 2020 and just being part of being an entrepreneur. My stress and my anxiety was becoming unmanageable. And, at times I was hardly even recognizing myself. So I think I would describe that I had executive burnout. And I'm sure we've all felt like this at one time or another, but I really didn't have the luxury to be able to stay in this mode for very long. I had a business I had to launch. So in this mode, you're not able to make the best decisions or problem solve, and there's no creativity or energy to do that. So what PQ has done for me is given me my sanity back. I can focus, lead with curiosity and creativity and innovation as the sages, and have the confidence knowing that I can work through all the issues and problems. But maybe even for me, being the perfectionist I am, knowing that if I can't and I'm not able to get the outcome that I wanted, that it's not the end of the world. As Shirzad says, as Jane mentioned, that what isn't the success becomes that learning lesson that will be helpful in your next event. I was spending so much time labeling everything in my life. What is good, or no, this is bad, bad, bad. One of the things that we learned during the program, and I keep this sticky still on my screen. It says surfing the waves of life. And, there's ups and downs, and there's really no sense in labeling things as good and bad because we don't know. We don't know what the long-term outcomes are going to be. But that is a really important lesson that has been for me, but probably really for all of us, at this point.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Jennifer. So as you both think about, like the specific mental muscles that you've been building, you both, touched on this, but is there anything else you could share, specifically about what you learned about your saboteurs or the judge and the PQ repping and the movement into sage powers? Can you focus in on your experience with building the muscles at all?
So I'll say that I was skeptical on this front, that I had a sense about, again, I've put such a priority to self-development in my life and in my career. And so when it came to this notion of a judge, I just didn't really buy that I had one. But be assured, we all have it. And it's so different and clear to me now. And I realize that there are probably, and all the saboteurs have had a role in my life, I think. At various times, different ones have been primary. And figuring that out was hugely valuable because there are sort of lingering moments when my mind is in a negative place, and I can now identify much more clearly where that's coming from. So I would say I'm the intercepting on saboteurs and identifying them, which, I think we can all acknowledge when we've been angry or frustrated or unproductive, those emotions, but understanding just how you can redirect pretty quickly. That is the real, I would say, an enormous breakthrough. And it's the whole thing around PQ reps and the practice, it is easy. It's just shifting your mind to really develop that muscle and practice. I think the place where I have the most work still to do is on activating sage, but it's more than a theoretical understanding for me. But that muscle is, of the three, the one that I just need to continue to pay attention to.
Yeah. And I think you bring up such a good point that the saboteurs can, ebb and flow at different phases of our lives. For me, as I shared with both of you along in the program, but for me, the judge is the biggest, and mostly judge of self. That's something I have really related to, and really had such heightened awareness of how pervasive that is in ways I didn't even recognize. So that's been interesting, but they all play a role at different times, or can. So what about you, Jennifer, on saboteurs or other muscles?
Yeah, I think exactly like Julie. I thought, judge? I don't judge other people. I don't have that at all. And it was a little bit of a selling job he has to do, but you can clearly know he's used to that. And I was able to feel that, and the judgment I have on myself, which I spoke about before, the perfectionistic. Anybody that works with me knows about that attention to detail, and how maybe some things that I prided myself on really were saboteurs getting in the way of, being able to go forward, and be successful, and to not be in such misery all the time and dwelling over decisions and actions that I've had and were they the right ones. I think for me, my biggest aha moment was talking about the sage powers, though, and that strong reminder that we all have them in us, and we have the answers, and we just have to get out of ourselves and get away, get beside ourselves, and really focus. And working through this program has allowed me to get back into that center. I think I had mentioned probably to Jane about, the last couple of weeks, especially, I've been in that deep laser focus work mode. And I think we've all had those moments, and we strive to have more of those where, you lose track of time because you're just focused on what you're doing. And that's inherently most of our successful times. But I also wanted to mention, the benefit of being in this group with Jane as our leader, and with Julie and our others, that I too have done a lot of self-development and read a lot of books, taken a lot of classes, but nothing compares to this, even though it's probably one of the most simple things I've done. But the changes that I have seen in such a short time, it's been great to have others to talk and share those experiences with. And I really think that has helped to continue my learning and growing immensely.
Great.
Yeah, thank you. What can you guys say about the app? And maybe talk a little bit about as opposed to like meditation, which often comes up as, how does this differ from meditation? And meditation is most definitely a way to build the sage portion of our brain, and it's good, and it's definitely related. I think the way that this differs is that it is designed, the program is designed to build doing this muscle building during the course of our days. And that's where the app comes in. So can you speak to that a little bit, what your experience was with the app, or is continuing to be with the app?
Sure. Do you want, I can go first.
Yeah.
So I actually have a pretty long standing practice of meditation. I'm actually learned how transcendental meditation over 5 years ago. And I can't say I did it every day, but I was really fairly consistent. This is a different type of practice. The two complement each other. But this practice and the PQ reps, which quite frankly, something that used to take 20 minutes is now, 2 minutes a couple times a day, has done more to change probably my brain than all the meditation. But now my meditation is actually at a higher level because of the PQ, and having the app just makes it really easy. Just, plug into it in the morning, and it directs you through.
Yeah. Thank you. That's right. That's the exact right word, that they complement each other really well. So thank you for that. What about you, Julie?
And I would say, it is the structure that it provides is very, for my personality, I value structure. I don't necessarily self-initiate it. So for those who have worked with me, you know how I love to have people around me who really help support that. The app, to just give you a sense of it, each day you have a notification, and it's a chance to reflect, and it's all structured, and it kind of gives you some choices of how you repeat, kind of build your muscles. But it's basically 3 times a day during the day that you do that. And then once a week, there's a larger conversation around what your goals are for the week. And that is a downloaded video. It gives the week something to be thinking about, that it is enormously productive and helps in each of the many things that we have to get done in a week, and breaks it down and helps you give context, I think, really valuable context to any of the things you're trying to tackle in a given day. So the structure is really valuable. The simplicity of it is incredibly, it just becomes intuitive. And for me, that is enormously helpful in how I've been able to do it.
Mhm. Yeah, I think it's set up in really in a brilliant way, because it is definitely building new habits. And again, I've been at this for many, many months now, and I can say that if I forget to be active in the program, mindful of the program, my coaching sessions go differently, my meetings go differently. I really, really can sense the impact that they have made for me as well. So I am just cognizant of time here, and I want to check in. Chris is going to be monitoring the Q&A, wondering if there's any questions coming in for any of us, or if now might be a time for those of you who are thinking about a question, if you want to enter those into the Q&A so that we can take some time here to address them. That would be great.
We do have one question, Jane.
Okay.
The comment is, this is really interesting. Thank you. Is Sage mode similar or related to what is described as being in the zone? As you develop your Sage muscles, do you find you are more in the zone, able to be in the moment?
Yes, in a word, yes, absolutely, all related to that. And being in the zone, I think, is just part of that. I joked in the beginning about Dalai Lama, and I mean, he is what Shirzad would say, like has arrived, to this point where this is what he lives constantly. And so to me, that's part of it. It's sort of this calm, like Julie was describing too, just this different level of awareness of yourself, and staying grounded and calm. So yes, I see it as very similar. Thank you for the question.
And that's the only question that we have right now, Jane.
Oh goodness. Okay, thank you, Chris.
Oh wait, we just got another one.
Awesome. Great.
How is this sustainable after the 6 to 8 weeks? Please describe what happens after that, how one would best maintain the practice. Love this. Currently reading The Obstacle is the Way, and the content is similar. Yes.
And okay, so a couple things in that question. Thank you, Chris, and thank you to whoever asked this. That's you're reiterating the point that I made in the very beginning, which is that so much is related to this, and that's why it has become just such a cornerstone for me, because honestly, everything that I'm reading, everything that I have ever read, not to exaggerate, I can see some threads right back to this. And in part, that's part of the benefit of this factor analysis. And one of the points Shirzad makes in the coaches training is that, we've learned so many different models, and they're good, they're really good, but it's hard to keep them straight in our heads. Like, which one do we apply, where? And that's where this one just seems to be this streamlining of so many different models. So So that was the first part of the question. The other part is a really good question. And the foundational program is, we've described it as intense practice. And again, it's not, that doesn't mean it's hard, but it is intense. And, like anything, you get the most out of that foundational program if you practice the way the program is outlined to do that. However, at the end, there are a number of different options. And we, as Lauber, are going to be offering, a group, a coach-led group coaching process that is, the foundational program with the app. And then at the end of that time, everyone is given options. So there are alternatives for continuation in the app for up to a year. And then beyond that, there's even options if you want to, explore that further, we can talk about that. But this is meant to be the foundation of habit building in the 8 weeks. And then anyone is supported with the original app for up to a year from the time that you would begin the program. So lots of building and opportunity. And as Jennifer was saying, one of the benefits that we are trying to provide around this program is the benefit of the group coaching process and also a bit of individual coaching in the midst of that too, so that you can really anchor in the foundation. So I hope that answers your question. Thank you.
We do have another question. Do you find women and men equally receptive to this practice?
Really, really good question. I can only tell you from my own experience, because the pilot group that we assembled was kind of by design, and it happened to be all women by design. But I do have other coach colleagues who have done this with men and women. I think it's really tough to generalize, because certainly when I'm in my my coach training, there are men and women in that are, equally embracing the process. So, obviously, I think it's an individual thing, but I have seen as well. I mean, it's tough because the coaching field is more predominantly women as well. So that's been, an acknowledged part of my training as well. So I can't speak from my own experience because my group was only women. I can imagine that there are, men who would equally value this, but there could be some differences. I can't speak to that, from my own experience. Okay.
There are no more questions right now.
Okay. And where are we at time? About 10 minutes to. So I'm trying to think if there's anything else we can add. Julie, or
I have one other.
We just did get another question in.
Oh, good.
Okay.
I'm hearing that Lauber will be offering this program. Can you speak to those details? Also, I'm interested to hear the answer about the previous question on the price for the app being $999, and if that's included, if this is going to be offered as a training program.
Okay, let me try and unpack that. There were lots of questions in that. Yes, so a couple of things. It is possible, absolutely, to go directly to the positiveintelligence.com website. And as an individual, it is offered, there is an offering for you to sign up for the foundational program, as well as, which includes the app. Shirzad does offer that for just around $1,000. Yes, that is correct. The difference that we are offering will be that everything that we are doing is encompassed in the foundational program is surrounded by professional coaching by me, who has, you know, an ongoing advanced training in this. And so the group coaching process is, you know, professionally facilitated with the other members of the group, as well as we are including a couple of coaching sessions in that. So we are priced a bit higher than that. And we will be sending out information tomorrow to everyone who is signed up here today with more details, and then an invitation to reach out to me so that we can chat further and I can give you even more details. But yes, and I think, I don't know, Jennifer or Julie, do you want to speak to, you know, perhaps the difference of, you know, signing up through Shirzad directly, or you know, or working with through us as the group coaching experience? Do you have a thought on that, or anything to add?
I'll lead with clear bias, and I don't know if it's a conflict because it's our firm that's offering it, but I will tell you the interesting thing to me, again, to the structure, there's that dimension, which is the weekly Zoom meetings we had to talk through our learning. That dimension adds such, frankly, I don't know that I would have nearly as much accomplished if I'd done this myself. And that's partly how I'm wired, but it's also the iterative process that this is, and the learning with each other. And when that's facilitated by someone who knows much more about all of this than we did, you know, I really feel like we had a tremendous opportunity and an acceleration, if you will, of the learning. And I think that self-guided learning, there's a real role for self-guided learning, but this, to me, if I could have had this program 20 years ago, I feel all of the learning I've done since then would be so much more valuable. And again, self-guided learning has its place, but because this is so very foundational, I just think that the group learning, which isn't available to you when you sign up individually.
Yeah, they will help people to pod together, if you will, but there's no professional facilitation to that. It would just be, you know, people getting together who are going through the program at the same time, but it's not, you know, guided in any way. So, Jennifer, do you have anything to add, or?
Sure. Yeah. You know, I think I kind of touched on this a little bit before about the importance, because I do really believe in that. And I too have been part of huge groups, you know, coaching calls of hundreds of people on it. But this lends itself, because of the subtlety of it, that having a smaller group, I think, is very beneficial. And Jane does a great job moderating it as well. And as we all know, not everybody lends itself for that. So, but I can't say enough about Jane and how she did, and the group itself. And I learned so much. I looked forward to those weekly calls and learned so much from the other women in the group. And you just have that smaller group to have that support team. So I think if you're thinking about doing this, I really would look at doing it locally more as the broader thing. I think you'll get more out of it.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Jennifer.
I just have one more question.
Okay.
How do you develop / select the group for a study at a company?
I'm not quite sure I'm understanding the question, but you know, there's a couple of different ways that I have heard other coaches do this. We have not done that yet, but for example, and I hope I'm understanding the question, but for example, some of the coaches have gone down the line of working this entire program with an intact team, for example. and in the right culture that would be receptive to that. I have already had conversations with individuals leading teams where that has been, we are looking at that down the road. And so that would be one way. The other might be, for example, one of the things I'm thinking, an area where this could be really beneficial could be for a group of emerging leaders to work through this together. Because when you think about that and sort of the vulnerability of that position and at the same time, the motivation to want to really step out well and be a high performer, and also, to have well-being. I mean, that's kind of a magical combination. And so those are a couple of ideas I would suggest. And I hope that answers your question. If not, we can chat offline at some point. You can reach out to me and we can talk further.
I'd like to just quickly add on to that as well. And Shazad talks about it in the book, but, coming from a larger company and leading teams, and we're definitely, when you have challenges or you're trying to get your team to look at things different, look outside of the box, be creative. Maybe you've got huge problems or obstacles, lost one of your major accounts or your whole industry is changing. This model, this is what he uses. And this is what, Jane could help implement in a company to get your team to go forward and not always think of all the things that wouldn't work or that won't work, or just to get stuck in that moment. I often, when I was reading the book, was thinking about my past experiences leading teams like this and how beneficial this would have been.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that perspective.
I have just one other point too that occurred. I feel that I have been, I think that people who worked with me or know me, people would agree that I'm a pretty positive person. I've always thought it's actually served me so well in my life. It's certainly in my career been incredibly valuable and helped me develop resiliency and sometimes even grit. But this is different. And I'm grateful to have that tendency. But to the point Jane made, there is this bias that we don't even necessarily consciously understand that our brain takes. And even for the most positive among us, there is still work to do to truly become kind of the people and the contributors in this thing called life that we're meant to be. So I do encourage you to explore this because it has only begun to be transformational for me personally and professionally. And I will be an enormous advocate of this going forward for sure.
Thank you, Julie. Okay. Do we have time? I don't know if we have time for one more question, but please be assured that I will look at the questions and, get back to anyone who has posed them. And again, I welcome any of you to reach out directly to me and we can chat further. I can answer your questions. And we do have, we will have some follow-up coming to all of you tomorrow with some further information. So thank you so much for being here. We appreciate you spending the time with us and really, really hope you have found it valuable. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Jane.